Okay, so today in today's class, we will have the preliminaries and fluctuations. We'll talk about the preliminaries and fluctuations. Introduction. The preliminaries bill gives the contractor the opportunity to price the opportunity to price the project overheads. So it's like just like the overheads, which are defined in the Code of Estimating Practice (COEP) as the site cost of administering a project and providing general planned site staff, facilities, and site-based services and other items not included in all in rates. So as we said before in the beginning of this course, that we said that there is something which is called overheads, and some things might not be, cannot be calculated in the BOQ. However, it is related to the project indirectly, and we call it indirect cost. And these costs must be paid in order for the project to go on. And these things, sometimes it's administrative offices, for the commuting to the project, and all these things, site staff, facilities, and all these things. So these are all these activities. It requires money. So we call it the preliminaries. So the standard method of measurement for civil engineering and building gives the general items which should be described in a bill of quantities in two main parts: the specific requirements of the employer and the facilities which would be provided by the contractor to carry out the work for himself. So there is sometimes the requirements from the contractor himself, from the client himself, and these are this part which was specific requirements of the employer or the client, and the facilities which would be provided by the contractor to carry out the work. So the contractor himself, he needs to do some facilities for his work, to provide it for his work, and some other requirements are by the employer himself. So how do we price the preliminary? For small repetitive works, a contractor or subcontractor may have a scale of overheads such as he can apply to a new project. So he has a scale of amount for repetitive works. So the same work he's doing in specific intervals, and repetitively he's doing the same job. So he has a scale that this kind of project, according to his experience, this type of project, it costs me this much of money for the preliminaries. So just he can apply this one whenever he has the same project. This may be calculated as a percentage of annual costs and adjusted where jobs deviated from the norm. So he could assign like a percentage, because it's the same project, but maybe the different size, not the same price or not the same cost for the project. The same project and nature, but not the same size, not the same scale of the project. So this is why he's assigning, like, for example, 5%, 10%, as we said before, for this type of project. This is the overheads or the preliminaries for this type of projects is like 5 or 6 or 7, whatever percent of the cost of the project. Typically, the site and office overheads for small houses and extensions may 15%. Okay, so small houses this type of project, which is small houses, extensions for the houses. So the office overheads is 15%, and for the subcontractor who have facilities provided by main contractor, the figure would be nearer to 10%. Why? Because less than the 15%. Why? Because other facilities are provided by the main contractor. For the subcontractor, the overheads will be 10%. For the main contractor who's providing all these things, he needs to take in account 15% more than that, due to the more responsibilities that he has. A typical sequence of events for pricing the preliminaries. How do we price the preliminaries? What are the steps that we follow to calculate the pricing or price the preliminaries? Make notes of general requirements such as temporary works and subcontract attendances when pricing the bill. So we need to know what are the general requirements and temporary works that we need to do for this work. So for example, if you want to do fencing around the project, as it is required from the governmental entities and maybe municipality, and also maybe you need to do some temporary roads, entrances, and all these things. So you have to take it in account. Prepare the site layout drawing showing the position of accommodation, access routes, storage, areas, services, inspect site features, and check the feasibility of proposals during the site visit. So when you go to the site visit, you have to check all these points to know what kind of works that you need, and because all of these things that will cost you money later on. So use the tender program for planning staff, planned and temporary works, because they ask you for planning your staff and the schedule of employing the laborers or staff for the project, and all these things. You have to go back for the contract or the tender itself. Read the client's specific requirements and all the tenders documents. As we said here, he has specific requirements. Maybe he wants you to do him, like for example, site office for him, provide some facilities for him, and all these things. And these are preliminaries. Price the project overhead sheet. Afterwards, you can do the pricing. The pricing the preliminaries bill. Both SMM7 and CESMM3 recommend that fixed and time-related charges are identified separately in a bill of quantities. SMM7 defines them as follows: a fixed charge is for work, the cost of which is to be considered as independent of duration. There is no relation with the time, as we said in the previous classes, that there are some things are related to the time. So by time, the cost will increase. Like we said that like renting for offices or accommodation for the laborers, all these things are time related. Bill of power and electricity, and water, and all these things. Once you are using these things, maybe it will be multiplied by time. However, maybe you cannot expect the electricity and water. Sometimes it depends on the use of this one. So it could be by material, just like the material. And the time-related charge of the work is cost, which is to be considered as dependent on duration. How much duration you use it, like for example, hiring the equipment, scaffolding, and all these things. So it is time-related. So we have two types of preliminaries: time-related and fixed amount or charge for these preliminaries. So you can divide these things in two parts or two bills, or one for this one and one for the other. This consists of general details of the project and site overhead items which cannot be included in the individual work sections in the BOQ, and the estimator will price as a lump sum those items or relevant costs. Maybe you can give a lump sum number for these costs, and will leave unpriced those items of general descriptive nature without pricing. Alternatively, add a percentage on the total cost of the bill to cover the cost of the preliminaries. So that means that you have to price in a lump sum the things that you know how much will it cost you, but other things that you cannot price it on, you don't have the descriptions of these things, but you know that it will cost you some money. You can put some percentage for this one, and you say that will cost this much percent from the total cost of the project. What are the preliminaries section? And we have general preliminaries, like description of the project, description of the site, form, type, and conditions of the contract to be used, contractor's liability and employer's liability. All these things will affect the preliminaries in your project, and these things which are general preliminaries, you cannot assume how much will it cost. You cannot put a lump sum or a cost for these things. So descriptions of the project, of the site, contractor's liability, and all these things, maybe you can put it as a percentage. But on the other hand, for the price to preliminaries, you can put a lump sum for this one. It is like scaffolding, water for the work, lighting, and all these things. You can say that this much I'm paying for the lighting, for the electricity, for the water, for the scaffolding, and this will cost me this much of money during the life cycle of the project or during the duration of the project itself. Temporary fencing, hoardings, screens, fans, and all these things, these are preliminaries, and it needs to be calculated, and you can give easily amount for this one because you know the duration, you know the quantity, and also you know how much does it cost in the market. So you can make like a checklist for these preliminaries. As we said, so we have two types. The first type which you can put as a lump sum, and the other type you cannot, which is called the general descriptive nature preliminaries, and these you can put a percentage for it. So for this one you can put a percentage, for this one you can put a lump sum. Okay, so this is a general and this is a lump sum you can put for these things. So employer's requirements for these, what we have said that one of the preliminaries that the employer has some of the requirements. So what kind of requirements does the employer need? Maybe sometimes he needs accommodation, furniture, install telephone providers. You need to do these things for him according to the contract. Transport charges and all these things. Supervision, like hotel expenses, planning, procurement, services like installation charges, office equipments, and all these things. We have type of mechanical planet, transport of planet, purchase of planet, and there's temporary works which we talked about. The temporary work, design and purchase of structures, access routes to and hard standings, which is used in the site, enclosures, dewatering, piling, and formwork. All these things maybe you find in the project there is a water and then you need to dewater all these things. So these are also extra work which is not in the BOQ. Site accommodation. In the site accommodation section under this topic, we have the transportation and the craneage, purchase costs, foundation and furniture, erection and fitting out. These things are required for the accommodation at site. And concrete conditions, insurance, premium, bonds, professional. These are the conditions that are very important in the project. Professional fees and all these things. These conditions maybe it will be available in the contract itself. So this is why you require to take it in account when you're calculating these preliminaries. And non-mechanical planet like scaffolding, erection, and small tools and equipments, and these are could be calculated as a lump sum. We know this one, we don't need to have it in like a percentage. And miscellaneous like settings out, consumables like some of the tools that you are using, and it will be consumed afterwards, like nails, hand gloves, PPEs, and all these things. They are consumables. Samples that you are doing, quality planning, protective clothing, which is the PPE as we said, and all these things are very important to be taken in consideration while planning for your and categorizing your preliminaries. Okay, now the fluctuations. In the majority of cases, especially for large projects, contractors must allow for changes in cost which occur during the construction phase. So if you have a project like 1 year and more than that, especially more than 1 year, because in 1 year maybe you can consider the inflation, which is more like 5%. It could be taken into consideration, but in larger projects which takes like sometimes 3-5 years or something like that, you have to put in your account or in your consideration that there might be some changes in the cost of the things that you have already priced. So the amount which the estimator adds to the estimate, the inflation is guessed. So we will get the inflation, and maybe you have some like pool of information, data, previous data we can depend on for the future inflation. So contractors must allow for changes in costs which occur during the construction phase. The amount which the estimator adds to the estimate the inflation is guessed, calculated after an examination of price trends over the previous few years, as we said, and discussions with the suppliers and subcontractors in an attempt to predict the future trends or the future costs of the project. If a contract is likely to last for several years, then the employer will request a tender based on current prices and any changes will be reimbursed using the methods defined in the contract. In the contracts, normally, especially in the standard contracts like FedEx and others, we have like a formula to cope with these problems that might happen in the future. So there is a formula wherever there is a fluctuations in costs for both parties, like the contractor and the client or the employer himself. There is a formula. We will use this formula in order to adjust the prices, the new prices. A contractor who tenders at a fixed price runs the risk that he may later have to pay more. This is just like in the lump sum for materials and labor than the prices and wages current at the time of his tender. Conversely, he may benefit if those prices and wages go down, which is like normally is not the case. The case is that prices are going up. So since these things are ramping up, this is why it's very important for the client, if he's tendering on a fixed price, wise, he has to take into account that there is a high risk on him, and he has to take it in the contingencies that we will talk in the next class in chapter 5. So market forces may persuade an employer, especially during times of high inflation, to accept or share this risk by including fluctuation clauses in the contract. As we said, on JCT, contracts include the system established in Britain includes 3 optional fluctuations clauses under which the contract price is varied up or down according to first, tax changes in wages and prices, changes in the relevant building cost indices. So the standards forms of contract have terms of either firm or fluctuating prices. A firm price is one which will not be valid for changes. So fixed price is not valid for not be valid for changes in the cost of resources. Although labor tax and fluctuations are usually reimbursed by the employer. So he's responsible for changes in these things. Fluctuations in labor taxes and fluctuations are usually reimbursed by the employer. Other things will not be reimbursed, like the cost of resources. In a fluctuating price, labor tax fluctuations are usually reimbursed by the employer, as we said. In a fluctuating price tender, the price is agreed before the job starts, but the contract sum can be adjusted for changes in the costs of resources. Later on, you can adjust on the fluctuating price tender. This is type of the tenders, fluctuating price tender. That means this kind of tender is taking care or sensitive, a price fluctuation sensitive, we can say, if it's agreed before the job starts. Then, but the contract sum can be adjusted later on for changes in the cost of the resources. When the resources cost changes, an estimator needs to understand the clauses dealing with the fluctuations so that he can tell the subcontractors of the risks and calculate his own forecast of increased costs. So that as an estimator for you, you have to calculate, to take care about the clauses, and you have to read it carefully and to know what kind of clauses are these, and how to calculate the costs, changes and fluctuations. In order in the future, if you want to subcontract this work for someone, you have to tell him what is the situation, and you have to tell him that your forecast for the increases in costs. So the subcontractors, they know the risks that they might have and their responsibility, liabilities, and yours. This is very important to take it in account when you are doing this type of projects, which are long time or big scale projects that takes a long time period while construction. This is the end of our of chapter 4 and our class for today. And next time we will talk about chapter 5, which is contingency sum allocated in the bill of quantities. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next class. Assalamu alaikum.